Hello and welcome to Crushing Comics. This is the comics review show from the Comic Crush. I am Jack Burton. With me is Gracie Law. This is the Pork Chop Express for this week. And we are going to be talking about no less than 4 of the latest comic releases. There is quite a lot to get through this week. Liz, how are you?
Doing well, thanks.
Good. It's lovely to see you as always. A ton of books this week. But before we get into it, have you seen a lot of the scuttlebutt on Spider-Man No Way Home in the last week? The pictures that have apparently leaked that allegedly, I don't know if they've since been disproved and I've just missed it, but there was an interview with Tom Holland a while ago where he was talking about how good the movie is, and there's a great scene where 4 characters sit around the table and talk about what it means to be a hero. This week, a picture surfaced of Tom Holland, I guess Marissa Tomei, because it was from the back, you couldn't really see her, Jon Favreau, and Charlie Cox, all sitting around a table in the Parker apartment.
Wow. Yeah, I mean that's been the rumor for a while. That Charlie Cox would be appearing.
Yeah, not only this, another picture surfaced alongside that one of all 3 Spider-Men in costume,
really?
maskless, facing some sort of off-screen drama. I don't know if these things are real. I don't know if they've since been disproved. So apologies, audience members, if they have been disproved. But so that all kind of popped up this week. Very keen to see the movie, which we're only like just over a month away from now. So I guess we'll know in like 5 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to keep my head down and not look at too many spoilers. But I, none of that, if it does turn out to be true, it will be obviously a dream come true. But it will also be like not too much of a surprise just because of the unavoidable sort of, kind of rumors about the film. And I mean, I am going to be, thrilled to get more of Charlie Cox's Daredevil. And, particularly, since he made that appearance at MCM recently, it's like, that's really telling, for me that he's going to be, and along with Karen Page as well.
Yeah, it'd be great to see them both. Actually, I really like both those actors and in those roles. So it'd be great to see them back on screen. But we'll know in like 5 weeks. Before that, we've got Hawkeye coming up, obviously on the 24th. No more real rumors surrounding that, but the Marvel machine is in full promo mode. Hello to the podcast listeners, by the way. I'm sorry, I didn't say hello to you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Now we've got like a ton of books this week, and it has been another week where all the good stuff has risen to the top.
It's great week in comics once again.
I was really impressed this week. Just the overall quality of the number of books. So today we are going to try and talk about as many as possible.
And I should mention that I didn't get to read all the books that we might have discussed because of the ransomware attack on Diamond. My shop, That's Entertainment, did not receive our Diamond delivery on Tuesday or Wednesday, so I did not actually manage to get my hands on a few books, of the books we may have discussed. So for me, it's, it was mostly the Marvel and DC.
Yeah, I should say the books we are going to read are, because we were given an advance copy of one of these as well. So Christopher Cantwell sent us an advance copy of Regarding the Matter of Oswald's Body digitally. I also brought it because I just really want to support the book. We also managed to get a look at Robin and Batman. Liz, you managed to get a look at Venom, right?
That I did. Venom Issue One here by Al Ewing and Ram V, drawn by Brian Hitch.
And I also read, and we'll see if we've got time for these, The Thing by Walter Mosley and Tom Riley, and What's the Furthest Place from Here by Matt Rosenberg and Tyler Boss. We will get into the sort of deep credits on those as soon as we talk about them. We'll try and get through as much as possible in the hour. So, Liz, do you want to start with regarding the matter of Oswald's body?
Yeah, sounds good.
So this is written by Christopher Cantwell and drawn by Luca Casalanguida. Sorry. It's colored by Diadem Machiso, and it's lettered by Underworld Design. It's out on Boom Comics. Boom #1s tend to sell out very fast. I think they tend to get a lot of heat around them. I'm not sure if it's something to do with the print run size as well.
Possibly.
But they're producing some great minis lately. I really like what Richie Ross is doing over at Boom. They're just great stuff, and I always really enjoy their first issues. So this is about what was at one time, and I think to a certain degree is, the American obsession. The Kennedy assassination,
which comes up, somewhat frequently in, fiction, but comics as well. Like, there's the Umbrella Academy arc that's solely focused around the Kennedy assassination, which is great play on that.
Yeah, and also Department of Truth heavily relies on the Kennedy assassination, and it's interesting that book, and of course this book, tackles it, because I always think, I'm sure it's historically not, however, I always feel that when you look at the Kennedy assassination and the stuff that followed afterwards, you are looking at the birth of the modern conspiracy theory. At least in popular culture. I mean, we've all seen, I hope a lot of us have seen JFK, which actually tries to deliver a very kind of stable version of that. I mean, I'm not sure this is kind of a bit weird in places. And it starts with, unearthing in 1981, Lee Harvey Oswald's body is unearthed for testing to make sure that it is indeed Lee Harvey Oswald's body.
Right, because the rumors were so rife at the time that actually there was a switcheroo, and Oswald is still out there, and they managed to get another guy who looked like him enough to be, a replacement in the actual grave.
And of course, Oswald famously shot live on television by Jack Ruby, who I think was like a low-level mobster or like a nightclub owner who was involved with the mob. I mean, I'm unsure. And of course, you've seen that in popular fiction. That is part of The Godfather Part 2, which is when Hyman Roth gets shot in the airport. So it permeates, as you say, fiction. Just it's all over the place. And I think I completely get why it's such a big thing, because actually when you look at history, yes, leaders and things have been assassinated, but it doesn't happen with that much frequency. It's not.
I mean, a president being assassanated is, and especially, in that way, in that visible way, it's just, it's wild, like, and there are elements of it that are kind of stranger than fiction.
Yeah. And of course the rumor persists to this day that in fact Lee Harvey Oswald was not
the actual shooter,
not the only trigger man on that particular job. Which is the theory that I find most feasible given the physics of it. However, I don't know. It's just one of those things. Is it something that's ever particularly obsessed you? Like, I'm not obsessed, but that's interested you in any way? Or
I mean, it is. It's a fascinating story. Like, when you kind of dig into it, it is. And, I don't think I've revisited it since I kind of learned about it, like the conspiracy theory elements for the first time, but obviously when you encounter it in fiction, sometimes you get, new nuggets of information and, it kind of twists your perception a little bit of, oh, okay, maybe that's plausible, or maybe, who knows? And, because obviously there's like, who knows how much the government wants you to know about really what's happened and, that sort of thing.
I think by now all the documentation they had was supposed to be released, but for various reasons hasn't. And,
and that's why you can kind of create your own stories around it. Yeah. I loved the Umbrella Academy twist, like I mentioned recently. That's great. If you haven't read that, that's a great play on it.
So yeah, I mean, as a comic, I really enjoyed this. It's a very packed book. There's actually a lot happening, even though it is kind of the sort of criminal version of putting the team together. It's right. It is this guy nominally called Frank, though I suspect that's not his real name, putting together a team of ne'er-do-wells. And also they're not kind of they're not expertly skilled in their particular fields, really. they're
none of them are particularly like good criminals or anything like that. And some of them don't even consider themselves to be criminals or aren't really criminals. Like the character of like Yellow Rose, she's not really a criminal.
No, she's a civil rights sort of
activist, but who finds herself being arrested just for trying to, to live her life and have equal rights.
Yeah.
Whereas like the character of whereas the character of Shep, who's like this like terrible bank robber who really sucks at, being a criminal. Yeah. He's like, he is, a bit of an outlaw, but just a really bad one, just not very good at it at all.
Yeah. And I actually liked those guys. And what was interesting for me about this book is that it's, again, Cantwell's work, he's done his show Halt and Catch Fire about the beginnings of the computer industry. Here he's tackling the beginnings of conspiracy theories, really, which are a pop cultural zeitgeist phenomenon, I find.
Mm-hmm.
But it tackles other pop cultural zeitgeist phenomena within it. So you have Richie Valens and Buddy Holly kind of being tackled there. It's that there is some great, clever stuff in it, and I just found it to be a really sort of intelligent book. I mean, I don't know how much of Cantwell's stuff you've read.
Not a tremendous amount.
I've been reading a lot lately. I've just read the first 2 volumes of She Could Fly again, which I'll be writing about on the site, and I'm just in the midst of reading his first Iron Man run,
which I've heard is great. I've heard really great things about that.
He's a phenomenal writer. I mean, She Could Fly, I came away thinking this might be one of the best comic books I've read in the last 10 years.
Wow.
Partly because of the way it tackles mental illness and sort of mental health issues, and partly just because it's a good comic. And I think he's very astute at tackling big scope in a personalized way, and making the thing that would in everyone else's book be the object of the story and the focus of the story. He kind of almost discards it and goes, well, no, actually, I'm going to look at this bit, and by doing that, I'll still be able to tell that story over here. And I really enjoy his writing for that. How did you feel about it?
I thought it was excellently done, really. Like, in terms of what you said, it's like, putting the team together and everything, with like, sort of a remarkable, like, economy. He introduces you to each of these characters, tells you exactly who they are, what they're about, and what their motivation would be for joining this team, and makes you like them, regardless of whether they're particularly likable.
Yeah. And none of them are really, I mean, they're not horrible people.
No.
As you say, with Shep, by virtue of the fact that he is kind of crap.
He's hapless. He's like, you almost feel sorry for him, even though he tried to, go into the bank and, sort of like hold up this little old lady behind the counter. She just makes a fool of him and he leaves practically empty-handed,
And also, you're unsure about whether or not it is going to be the Kennedy assassination itself, or the sort of stuff surrounding that's going to be the focus, which by the end, which I don't want to give away because it to say would give away a large portion of the story. But yeah, I really like this. I love crime books. I'm not sure how I feel about conspiracy books or conspiracy theories. I think it's a weird time for conspiracy stuff, just because we feel that it is now the. I don't know how it is there. I'm assuming it's as bad, if not worse, there as it is here. But I feel that conspiracy theories have kind of become the fabric of everyday life now. And I actually feel like things like extremism are no longer confined to extremists, but to everyday people, sadly, and sort of culty behavior. So all that stuff starts to swirl around in this kind of mass of, I don't know, crap that you have to put up with in daily life just to kind of get any sense of what's going on. So I always find it weird when people are kind of tackling conspiracy stuff now. However, I think the setting of it gives you a remove, which is nice, jumping back to 63.
Sure, yeah, exactly. You're and between 63 and 81, it looks like.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, obviously long before the internet was what made, all this conspiracy theory stuff so accessible to the masses. Which I think is where a lot of that happens is, on, people's YouTube channels and, Reddits and, subreddits and whatever,
Well, I would like to point out, not this YouTube channel.
No,
we've both had our jabs. Thank you. Yeah, it's a great book, and I really want to. I'm kind of keen to dig further into this, and indeed into more of Cantwell's work. I've got a few more books to read, and I'm this week. I'm slowly going to be putting out stuff about his work as a sort of focus on the site. So look out for that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Good. Yeah, it was a good book, and we're really grateful to Christopher Cantwell for sending it to us early. We really appreciate that. Thank you.
That really helps me because the book hadn't come in on Wednesday, and I wouldn't have been able to read it otherwise. So
yeah, just thank you very much for sending it to us. A great book. I definitely recommend, if you have any kind of interest in that larger American culture, to go and get it as soon as you can, if it's available to you. Should we move on to a book that I think you're almost genetically predetermined to like, Liz?
Well, it is yet another origin story for my favorite DC character, Dick Grayson. It was pointed out to me that actually this is the first time they've really revisited the Robin origin in 20 years. Can you believe that Robin Year One came out 20 years ago, Paul?
I know.
That's wild.
That is, oh man, that's such a great book as well.
It came out, I remember it coming out because it came out, like, it sort of interrupted the Devin Grayson run, which I really love. And so at the time I was just annoyed. I was like, yeah, well, I just want to go back to like my Devin Grayson story, please. But it is great. It is great. Of course, it's Chuck Dixon and who has a real firm handle on the character. And it holds up. Robin Year One, holds up. The last time I saw it collected, it was collected in tandem with the Batgirl Year One story.
Yeah, in fact, I don't know where it is. I haven't got it in here, but I do have the latest edition of it, which was a nice sort of deluxe edition. unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to. I should have grabbed it really, but it is a really nice. The latest edition is Robin Year One Deluxe, which is just soft cover, and is definitely worth picking up.
But that's not the book we're talking about, obviously, today. We're talking about another Robin origin story, which
I kind of don't feel. I think what it tackles is there's some good stuff between. If you want to take Dark Victory as your first Dick Grayson encounter, which I do now, canonically, I see Dark Victory being the beginning of Robin. And there is a fantastic book called Gotham Knights, the Gauntlet, which was a one-shot prestige thing where Batman sends Dick Grayson on his first case, and he has like a time limit, and he's got to crack the case by that time. I think this fits just nicely almost between those, because here we've got a Robin who isn't allowed to be Robin just yet. Batman's kind of considering whether or not to take him on as a teammate, and they're sort of toying with names like Batboy, and he's wearing the all black costume, and so there are some accoutrements they bring to it, which I don't think we've seen before, really.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely like, it's got a darker tone than a lot of the other. I would say certainly than Robin Year One or even Dark Victory. I think it's darker in tone than that. It's moodier. Certainly like Dustin Ewan's art kind of reflects that, because it's a lot of dark tones. He's wearing a black costume that's a bit like, like Matt Murdock's Daredevil costume in, the Netflix series, similar. And it's Dick being a little bit angsty, which is not really like, your typical Dick Grayson, Robin Boy Wonder.
And it kind of, it's interesting because in the diary entries, you can see him kind of almost choosing to be the other identity. That is to say, to not be like Bruce. It's a conscious choice rather than the natural organic thing we've always assumed it is. Because, hey, he's a kid and therefore, so it's always going to be light and funny. And it's not an organic choice. It's not an organic thing that just comes out of his natural character. It's something he chooses because he sees the way Bruce is and goes, well, I don't want to be like that.
Right. So it's a conscious choice.
Yeah. I want to be the healthier. Yeah.
And in fact, when it comes to the costume and Dick designing his own costume, he even says, I'm kind of doing this to piss him off.
Yeah.
By having the bright colors and, the opposite of what he represents visually.
Yeah, because one of the things they've kind of retrofitted on to the Batman mythos is that the reason why the Robin costume is so bright and colourful is that he's meant to be the distraction that everyone else shoots at whilst Bruce is sort of stealthily
sneaking up behind them.
Yeah, beating the crap out of them. Which it doesn't say much about Bruce as a parental figure, really.
Right.
No matter how much Kevlar you're wearing. And indeed, we do see a very different version of the Robin costume in this book, and one that I've never seen before. This sort of very armored thing, and I quite like that. There is something here that connects it back to Halley Circus and the Flying Graysons, which I really liked. I don't want to give that twist away.
Yeah, but that is
the latter half.
Sure, and that was something I wasn't expecting either. I don't think I've seen that before. There's a particular character who kind of comes into play who it seems would have connections with Halley Circus that maybe we haven't seen before. And it's tough talking about that because I kind of wanted to address that particular character has been turning up in loads of books lately.
Yes, I was just thinking this evening when I was reading it. I wonder if there's some
movie connections or something.
It's very interesting because he pops up in Whistle, which is the Gotham new Gotham Hero young adult book I just read, which was amazing, by the way. And I heartily recommend. There's a review of that on the website, and I heartily recommend that to anyone. The thing is, this is not the first time that connection's been made. I think it's been made before.
All right, maybe it slipped my mind.
If anyone knows what we're talking, I mean, could we say who the character is?
Yeah, I think
so. So the character is Killer Croc, and I believe this isn't the first time the connection between Killer Croc and the Halley Circus has been made.
Haley's.
If any, Haley's. You think it's Haley's?
Yeah, I think it's Haley's. All right, let's ask. Yeah, let's ask our audience who they agree with.
Haley's or Halley's?
Haley's.
But I think it's Haley's because of the way it's spelled.
If podcast listeners, I am giving 2 thumbs down on Paul's Halley's theory. Please weigh in.
Yeah, so Liz is the more well-read of the two of us, so I'm inclined to believe her. However, I'm just going to disagree because I don't like agreeing with her too much. It sets a really bad precedent for the show, unfortunately, and indeed our lives.
And I digress anyway. So
I'm like Killer Croc. If anyone remembers Killer Croc, has the connection been made before? I think it has. Do let us know in the comments. Do correct us on the correct pronunciation, or what you feel the correct pronunciation is. I love this because it was. I love the fact that it's entirely from Dick's perspective, and Lemire manages to kind of stay in that mode for the entire issue. And it's a fairly long issue, and that's something I've got to bring up this week because every bloody book was long.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was not a.
It's not an easy week this
week. for but hey, that's just how it goes sometimes.
And you may think, kids, and indeed adults, that we are moaning about the length of the books because maybe it takes a bit longer to read them, which it did. But the real problem is more comic, more money. They were all apart from Oswald's Body, they were all pricey books this week.
$5 and $6 books, yeah. At least.
I went into Gosh expecting to spend 15 quid, and I spent about 35. So it's just it's a crazy week. And not that we're putting you off buying comics. I think you buy what you want to buy and what you can afford, but never let it become the overriding thing. I mean, the perspective is great. Lemire is like a powerhouse at the moment. He's just, as we talked about a few weeks back, he is just
churning it out.
Yeah. But in the best way possible. They're all good. And he, of course, has another Black Label book coming, although this isn't Black Label, I've just realized.
This isn't. And I wasn't sure, because when I started reading it, I was like, oh, this is quite dark. I had to go check the cover again to make sure it wasn't a Black Label book. I mean, it's certainly, I would say
it's rated for young teens. So the sort of YA, 13 and up.
Right. But I could,
perfect
flipping through. Well, yeah, exactly. So suitable.
Sorry, go on.
Although I would say it is one of the darker toned Robin stories I've read. It's not quite All-Star Batman and Robin or anything like that,
No.
But it's it is, certainly not as bright and sunny a Dick Grayson story as I'm used to, which was interesting.
It isn't a bright side, and Newman's pencils really kind of. I mean, there's some gorgeous panels in this.
Oh, it's beautiful. I mean, he's great at doing bat related stuff. He did a bunch of the Streets of Gotham. He did Little Gotham, which is great. For very younger readers and people who just like sweet little stories. The Little Gotham series is very great.
And it's interesting because the real kind of Robin sections have this A lot of it has this sort of pinkish hue to it, this lighter pinkish hue. Whereas when you get into the sections that are kind of more dominated by Batman, it becomes very black, very dark, you know. So the color scheme is absolutely gorgeous. I'm sorry, we didn't mention the full credits at the beginning of this. So it's written by Jeff Lemire, as we've said. Art and colors by Dustin Nguyen. Letters by Steve Wands. Edited by Ben Abernathy.
I assume that Dustin Nguyen works in watercolor. It really looks like it's been.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd love to. I mean, I don't know how to reach him actually, because I'd love to get in touch with him and get him on the interview show.
Yeah.
So, big news about an interview just after, as we come to the end tonight, guys. So I will jump in there and let you know what's happening next week. Yeah, so a great book. I think so far, only going by this one issue, a worthy addition to that canon of sort of Robin year one, if you like, which I think in the chronology is about year 3 for Batman.
Right.
Year 3, or some people think it's year 5. I don't know. I've always placed it at year 3. But yeah, great stuff. Liz, do you want to talk about Venom? Because you read that. I didn't get to read this week.
Right. Yeah. So you read the thing, and you read
What's the furthest place from here?
What's the furthest place from here? I did not get to read either of those. I did actually grab a copy of the thing, but I didn't have time, because Venom is another book that's just massive. Like, I mean, it is a tome. I can't remember how many pages this is, but
it looks like double or triple size. What is it, like $5?
Oh yeah, like $6, I think.
Right, Jesus.
Yeah, $6. I mean, and you get a lot of bang for your buck. Certainly, your $6. Yeah. So this is the brand new Venom issue 1. As I said, by Al Ewing and Ram V. Art by Brian Hitch. Let's see. Further credits. Inks by Alex Sinclair. Pencils. Colors. Oh, I've got this wrong now. Sorry. No, yeah. So pencils by Brian Hitch. No, I was right. Inks by Andrew Curry. Colors by Alex Sinclair. VC's Clayton Coles doing letters. So this is a book I've been excited for. I think we probably at least touched on this a few weeks back when it was kind of announced that the creative teams, or at least the writing half of the creative teams on the Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk and Donny Cates' is Venom, were basically swapping places as their runs on the books wrapped up.
Yeah.
So a lot of people were excited about that, because both of those were really kind of beloved runs on each of those characters. So I think this was a great way to kind of satisfy people that those books were ending, because instead they've kind of just swapped places, and we get to see their takes on on these characters. I thought the Donny Cates Venom series was brilliant, and he made some really fundamental changes to the character, and the mythos during his run. So anybody who doesn't want to be spoiled to Donny Cates' run, unfortunately, it's kind of unavoidable for me to talk about it. So
okay, so guys, if you're watching and you haven't read Donny Cates' run, you probably need to pause now or stop now and then come back to us.
Yeah, mute it for a while. I don't know. Yeah. Mute it. The thing is, it's but if you don't really mind some mild spoilers, it's it is what it is. A lot of people, a lot of readers were concerned that this was going to be another reboot in which they kind of just threw out the canon that Donny Cates had shifted around and had created during his run. So what I can say about that is that is not the case.
Okay.
They've fully embraced what Donny Cates had been doing, and they're going to run with that, which I think, for me, that was like a big relief, because I was just like, well, he's made these kind of huge sweeping changes, and it would be such a letdown to me if they just kind of said, well, yeah, that, but this is our run and we're just going to totally drop all that and, pretend it doesn't, because that is something that's happened, I remember, I'll never get over the fact that, after Grant Morrison's New X-Men, they basically just chucked out all of his big changes and all of his twists and big ideas, and, just kind of said, well, none of that actually mattered. So
yeah, and then, I mean, I think that wasn't kind of even acknowledged until Astonishing X-Men came along, right? And Whedon kind of made his sequel to...
Like, he actually just kind of kept running with Morrison's continuity and ignored the stuff they were doing in the other X books. Right. Power to him. But yeah, I mean, things like that, I find that annoying. It's like when you get a reboot and you've just had some really big developments happen, and then they just kind of, like sweep it under the rug. And so this doesn't do that. This obviously one of the big changes they made in Donny Cates's run was that it was the history of the symbiotes and the origins of the symbiotes, and and actually he created this whole backstory that just kind of really deepened the whole mythology of them.
The Null stuff.
Yeah, right? The Null stuff. Yeah, the King in Black. Which,
leaked out into, like, there was Silver Surfer Black as well, which was, I didn't even realize was a Null book until I got about an issue or two in.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he really projected that mythology onto, like out into the greater Marvel universe. There were loads of books that tied into the King in Black storyline. There was
see, that was my kind of drop-off point for Venom, because I was really enjoying the first parts of Donny Cates' run, but the moment it became an event, I was just like, no, sorry. I will go back and
Right. I mean, I don't think all of the event stuff is essential reading, but I think, as long as you're reading the main book, and the other big change he made was to introduce Dylan Brock as Eddie's son. And so both of those ideas carry over into this book. And, and so we have Ramvi writing from Dylan's perspective.
Right.
So this is the way they've sort of, I was wondering how that was going to go with having two different writers. But Eddie's storyline is being written by Al Ewing, and Dylan's is being written by Ramvi. So,
fantastic.
Yeah, so it works really well. I really, really liked it. And it's very seamless, but at the same time, you've got the angsty teenager voice that's, he's, Dylan is still down on Earth. And, he's kind of having to go through, all the hardships you kind of have to as like this sort of outsiderish kid in high school who's getting into fights, and his dad is absent because he's out in space being a symbiote god, and that seems to be more what Al Ewing is interested in writing is the fact that Eddie is now essentially a god. He is the King in Black. He is like, after defeating Null, he, it's his job to sort of, patrol the universe and lead the symbiotes. As a race, and he has the ability to kind of enter their hive mind, and he's trying to redeem the bad that Null did to the universe, which was pretty great damage that he did, and he's trying to sort of right the wrongs and be a good king, but that means being away from Earth and his son for long stretches of time, and time seems to move differently out there. So while all this is going on, of course, something goes badly wrong without, me wanting to give away too much. Something changes, and Eddie then, has to go rushing back to Earth to try and protect his son. So there's, a bunch of really interesting stuff happens in this issue. It is a like jam-packed issue, but that really, like, I thought the characterization was great. You really care about Dylan right away. Eddie, the stuff that's going on with Eddie is all, it's like really sort of, big grand stuff, for a character that was a much more sort of, down on the ground, street level kind of character before.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, absolutely. If you liked Donny Cates's run on this, definitely pick this issue up. If you haven't read Donny Cates's stuff, I would say go back and read it, but you also don't have to pick this up, because it gives you all the information you need to just kind of, to grab this one and run with it. So, yeah, like, great stuff, as I expected, from this creative team. I was expecting something good, but I really, really liked it.
How was the art? How did Hitch's art?
Hitch's art, I mean, if you like Hitch, looks great. He's a very, very good storyteller. He's does a beautiful job with like, there's particular panels that, are just like so much detail. I mean, Hitch is like really, really good with fine detail. And, there's a particular page I'd really like to mention, but it would involve giving too much away.
Okay, great.
So
we'll maybe talk about that off air. Yeah, I mean, it sounds fantastic. I kind of do wish I'd picked it up now, but sadly, actually, I would not have had time to read it.
It's long, but it didn't feel ponderously long. Sometimes when you have like a big issue like that, it's like, oh wow, that's going to be a lot of reading. I flew through it because it's the pacing, it moves right along, and you kind of which is always good. Yeah.
I mean, right?
It's but by the end, it's pretty gripping, I have to say. There's like some stuff that happens that it's like, oh, I need to find out. Yeah,
I mean, I've got to confess, I got halfway through to this week's books, and I'm feeling a bit under the weather, so I had to have a little nap for about an hour, because I just really was not feeling good. So yeah, unfortunately, I wouldn't have had time to read it anyway. Fantastic. I mean, if I can move on to another Marvel book.
Yes, please.
Unless you've got anything else you wanted to say about Venom.
I really liked it. I think I've kind of, hopefully I've given it the push that it deserves, because it was really great. And I'm also looking forward to Donny Cates's run on the Hulk, so when that comes out, I'd love to talk about that. So
yeah, hopefully we'll get to see that, which I think is relatively
either
soon.
Next week or the week after, something like that.
The Thing #1. This is The Thing, the next big thing. This is by Walter Mosley, who is a novelist who wrote Devil in a Blue Dress and various other books. I hope I've got that right. Art by Tom Riley, colors by Jordi Belair, letters by VC's Joe Sabino. I can't say I'm not a Fantastic Four fan. I think it all depends on, as with Marvel, I don't want to dive into years and years of continuity. I picked this up largely because it was Mosley, and because I took a look at the interiors of the book and really loved the art. It's Ben Grimm returning from a fishing trip. No one's around. Reed and Sue are in Russia. I won't give too much away, Liz, because I know you haven't read it yet. Reed and Sue are in Russia. Alicia seems to be kind of swanning around with this guy that isn't really like a paramour or suitor, but Ben, of course, thinks that he is. Johnny is off at a car rally. So Ben's kind of alone and lonely, and it speaks to the kind of loneliness and alone feeling that someone who looks the way Ben does would experience, and also gives him a literal curse to go with the kind of metaphysical, psychological one that he feels he's carrying. I won't say too much because you haven't read it, and I wouldn't want you to be surprised. But I will say one of the fascinating things about the book is, although it is set earlier in Fantastic Four continuity. So it's Brooklyn, New York, years ago is the opening gambit. And although the continuity of this storyline is not set in the 60s heyday of the Fantastic Four, it absolutely could be, given the look. The art style is very much leans towards that kind of nostalgia vibe that you get with a lot of books now, kind of like Javier Pulido and you know artists like that. And we were talking about him for Robin Year One earlier. Again, I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to spoil it for you or for the audience, but I highly recommend this. And I don't often recommend Marvel books, as you know, although I seem to be picking up more and more Marvel miniseries, but definitely go get that.
Right. Now, I do want to ask because what I know of Walter Mosley, and I've never actually read any of his work, is that he is known for writing crime books.
The Easy Rulings novels.
Right. So
if I recall correctly,
would you say that background applies to this at all, or
no?
Okay,
not at all. I think he actually is a big fan. Like he's just a huge fanboy,
right?
And I think he clearly loves Ben Grimm.
Okay.
And I think that's what's driven this. Again, he's someone I'm unlikely to be able to get to interview to ask. So
you never know.
But I will say, if this is the kind of indication of Walter Mosley writing comics, then please write more comics. It's just a really, really solid, good book, and the look is fantastic. And Tom Riley and Geordie Belair, they've just created this beautiful kind of vibe in the book.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way it looks. Like I do have my copy right here.
Yeah.
I did want to try and get a chance to read it, but it just did not happen. But I will read it on your recommendation.
Yeah, and it is kind of there's all sorts of really cute, sweet stuff in it, and some really nice Marvel cameos, and I think it's definitely worth you guys as in the audience picking up, and I do hope you take a look. And I do just want to give a quick mention. We're nearly at the end. What's the Furthest Place book from here? By Matt Rosenberg and Tyler Boss on writing and art, and Hassan Otsamani Elhu on letters. A fascinating post-apocalyptic story that seems to be a kind of almost Logan's Run-esque look at teenagers who aren't allowed to grow up and are not given any context for their lives, and are, in fact, the only context they get is the records they're surrounded with in this sort of disused record store that they live in. It's a great first issue, as is The Thing, as is Robin and Batman, as is Oswald's, regarding the matter of Oswald's body, because it gives you just enough. And in fact, the context for the book and the story and almost what is happening doesn't come till the end of the book. There are, again, like a beautiful color scheme in The Thing. Tyler Boss definitely needs to be doing more books. He needs to be working for the big two. I mean, I'm surprised they haven't snapped him up. I don't know if that's his kind of choice. In fact, he has done work for the big two, of course. I'm being a bit silly there, but you'd think he'd be doing the prestige format minis right now, and they'd be getting him to do Batman and getting him to do like the Wonder Woman minis and Superman and all that stuff, because he's an amazing creator. I don't know if did you read 4 Kids Walk Into a Bank?
No, I never did actually. That's man, like, yeah, no, I remember there was like all that buzz about it at the time, but the problem was not available.
Yeah,
because it was so in such demand.
If you get to check the back issue sections of that, or get to have a look in there, if they've got, I don't know if they do it, like they got like a secondhand trade section. They do. If anyone's traded that in, snap that up, because I snapped it up when just as they announced the movie. Weirdly enough.
I'm sure I did read the first issue. Actually, looking back, I remember the first issue. In fact,
I think I managed to get to read the first couple, but by then it just got too difficult trying to make sure I grabbed a copy before like it sold out at the shop. So, but yeah, like definitely worth reading. A million miles from that, almost, apart from the fact that you have teenage protagonists. And I think Rosenberg writes teenage protagonists really well. I think his kind of career trajectory is very interesting because he's writing on like books for the big two at the moment. So he's done quite a bit for Marvel. He's doing quite a bit for DC, and you kind of get the feeling that what he's doing. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn because I really like Matt. I've met him a couple of times. He's a lovely, lovely guy. He was the very first interview I ever did for the Comic Crush, which was for Hawkeye, and what he seems to have done is built up this beautiful war chest so he can go and create this thing with Tyler Boss, and they have the money to create a soundtrack for it by actually hiring bands that they like to record covers and things of music. Wow. So there is a version of this that you can get that comes with a vinyl record. However, wow. Those were heavily allocated in the UK, and I didn't have 15 quid to spend on a single issue this week. So unfortunately, I didn't get that.
Well, I'll be curious to see if our copies come in with the record because I would imagine.
Do you have a vinyl player at home?
I don't.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. Is like I'd just be buying it to collect. I wouldn't be.
See, I do need to get a record player because I actually have tons of records, but the record player I have is broken. So.
That's a shame.
Wow. Buy a new one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, record players these days. I don't know. Like,
we sell them at the shop.
I'm kind of getting back into. Oh yeah, of course, because it's
a record store as well. Yeah.
I'm kind of getting back into that sort of music right now, and by that sort of music, I of course mean pop and rock and things like that. Something other than the soundtracks that I normally spend my entire day listening to. Yeah. So I don't want to say too much about the book. It is gorgeous, but it is a kind of weirdly uncertain tale. Like you're never quite sure where you are or what it's about almost. And that kind of comes towards the end. You start to get a sense. So I highly recommend it. I do also want to bring this up. This came out yesterday, Friday, by Ed Brubaker, Marcus Martin, and Musta Vincenti. This was a Panel Syndicate webcomic that has now been released. It's going to be released in 3 volumes, I believe. It's a gorgeous looking book. It's a kind of YA detective story. However, it's not for YA audiences. So I mean, for me, that combination of Brubaker and
you had me at Brubaker and Marcus Martin.
Yeah.
I actually have not heard of this, funnily enough. So that's news to me, but cool. I mean, if we get copies in the shop, I'll definitely grab one.
The Panel Syndicate stuff is worth picking up when it comes out because I think they only do one run of it.
Right.
And quite often they won't release trades like Barrier. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
From Brian K. Vaughan? And
that's never been collected, has it?
No. Yeah. It came out in sort of a slipcase edition with all 4 issues.
Yeah.
But never, ever got collected. And I think that was at Brian K. Vaughan's insistence. He was just like, no, I'm not collecting this.
I wonder if I actually have those. I feel like I bought them, but I could be wrong.
I know I've got 4 or 5 or whatever it is. I'm yet to finish reading it, of course. It's one of those things.
Oh, I read it, but I don't know if I actually kept my copies.
It's great. The Panel Syndicate stuff is amazing. Liz, anything else you want to add this week?
No, just like, this was really a great week for me, honestly, everything I read, I really, really enjoyed. There was no like kind of, having to kind of, really think about what we should cover, because there's just like, so much, to choose from.
It was a fantastic week.
Yeah. I definitely enjoyed, That may be the first thing I've read of Christopher Cantwell's. And for me, that definitely sets a high bar. I'll definitely have to check out She Can Fly.
Yeah, like that is a stunning piece of work, I feel. And in fact, he's about to release. He did say that due for release, I think it was supposed to be the same day as this was Volume 3 of She Could Fly. I didn't see it in it. Gosh, it could just be that there is sometimes a slight delay with Dark Horse books, so that didn't quite make it this week. Hopefully, it's out next week, and I'll be able to pick that up. But yeah, definitely worth reading. As is his Iron Man run and Everything, which is his other book for Dark Horse. So Liz, thank you so much for joining us this week. We do have to say that now next week we are in debate about what is going to happen. So Liz can't make the show next week, unfortunately. She's busy with other stuff and sadly can't do the show. So I may do a sort of quickie show, just concentrating on one or two books on my own. I don't know yet. Or
we could, there's always the possibility that you could invite one of our other fine co-hosts to, be your wingman.
I could, but I don't know how many of them are picking up single comics on a weekly basis, which is the problem. And I don't want to make them go and spend money they don't have to. So what might happen is you might get a very weird show next week with just little old me. Sorry, but there you go. The show indeed must, or maybe should go on. We don't know.
It should go on.
But if I do come on next week, what I will be talking about almost exclusively is Ram V's Radio Apocalypse, which again, we thank you to Vault and to Ram. We got sent an advance copy of. We are going to take a look at that. And I'll be doing something on that next week. Now, the week off, no, in fact, that week as well, one thing you will be getting is a really fantastic interview with none other than Kelly Sue DeConnick. I'm really thrilled that I got to interview Kelly Sue. I want to say thank you in advance to DC and to Kelly Sue and her assistant for helping set that up. We are going to be talking about Wonder Woman, Historia, the Amazons, which is this absolutely gorgeous, stunning black label book that's coming out at the end of November. I've seen the art. It is a much delayed book. Most of the delays, well, a big chunk of the delays have come from Phil Jimenez, not because he's a slow artist or a bad artist, but because he's an incredible artist, and the amount of detail he's gone into on the pages is beyond anything I've ever seen in comics. Like I genuinely am absolutely stunned. So that interview went out to the patrons this week. If you're one of our patrons, which you can join from £2 a month, you can see that interview in advance right now. The rest of you will be able to see it next week. We kind of hope that's the start of sort of more interviews this year, and I've certainly got some special stuff planned for 2022 in terms of creator interviews. So I hope you'll kind of stick with us. As I say, we will be taking a break sort of just after, I think it's going to be just after the 29th of December through a big chunk of January, just because, it takes a lot of work to do this stuff. Reading the comics, getting the reviews done, getting the website set up. It is pretty much, the podcasts are two-handers, and I'm always very grateful for my co-hosts coming on, including this fine co-host here. And the website itself is a one-man job. So unfortunately, I don't always have as much time as I'd like to get as much stuff done. Next year, I want to change that. So I'm going to take a big break, and we're going to look at creating a lot of content in advance. I hope you'll stick with us, because we really want to start discussing more comics and movies and things like that in a much more kind of enriched and in-depth way. So yeah, please stick with us. Have a look at the Patreon though. Please do, because that will really help us out in terms of content creation. And also there's the web shop. All the links will be in the description at the bottom there. Thank you for joining us either on YouTube or the podcast. I really appreciate you guys sticking with us each week, and we'll catch you soon. Liz, see you soon. Have a good week next week.
Thank you.